any use of a dirty bomb or any potential to turn these nuclear power stations into dirty bombs will get a very strong response, very strong conventional response from the West. But I think it's the death throes of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. They are absolutely desperate and would appear to be trying almost anything to hang on.
Russia says that Ukraine is planning to use a dirty bomb on its own territory. That's been rejected by Britain, France and the US. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky had this to say.
If Russia says that Ukraine's allegedly preparing something, it means one thing. Russia has already prepared this. I believe that now the world should react as harshly as possible. If Russia's prepared to raise the stakes again and escalate things, it must see that the world will not tolerate it.
What exactly then is a dirty bomb? It's a phrase that we often use. Hamish de Bretton Gordon is the former commanding officer of the UK's Chemical, Biological, Radiological and Nuclear Regiment. And we can speak to him now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
It doesn't sound like a good thing at all. Just explain exactly what a dirty bomb entails.
Well, in simple terms, it's using radiological isotopes, uranium, plutonium or polonium, something like that, that is either used in nuclear weapons or in the nuclear industry to create power, and basically blowing it up and spreading it in a dispersion device to spread radiation around. There's a lot of it, and this is a false flag that the Russians are claiming. It's a tactic they've used frequently in the hope to escalate themselves, and I think also in the hope that the West won't escalate and provide more weapons and intelligence to the Ukrainian military, who are in effect defeating the Russian army at the moment.
Which countries around the world have the capabilities of making a dirty bomb?
Well, anybody who has access to radiological isotopes has the ability to make a dirty bomb. Hitherto, it's always been seen as perhaps a terrorist weapon. And I don't really know of any examples where this has been used. And that is why the Russians are suggesting, I expect that the Ukrainians are doing it, because in theory, they would have access to radiological isotopes and they could produce some sort of dirty bomb like that.
How much damage could something like this cause? I mean, I know we're talking about this because the Russians have said the Ukrainians are doing it and the Ukrainians have said this is rubbish. Britain has said it's rubbish. America has said it's rubbish. But, it is still a slightly terrifying spectre, regardless of who ever did this. How much damage do dirty bombs cause, or can they cause?
Well, I think the psychological damage is probably more likely than the physical. Actually, the radiation would probably be very small and very localized unless you used a huge amount of radioactive material and a massive explosion. I think the biggest area of concern is the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power station. We have heard in the past Russians threatening to blow it up and sort of used it as an improvised nuclear device. If they did that, that would create a massive dirty bomb. And as we know from Chernobyl back in the mid-1980s, radiation from there landed in the UK, and areas of Wales were contaminated for many years. So I think a dirty bomb with a small amount of radioactive material would probably have a very little damage to the population and to infrastructure, but psychologically it would be horrific. And this is why I think the Russians, in their false flag at the beginning of the war, you might remember they threatened that there would be a chemical or biological false flag attack from the Ukrainians. Now they're moving on to the dirty bombs. We know they've threatened nuclear weapons a lot recently, which I think is highly unlikely. But the weaponization of nuclear power stations, I think, is the most likely. And this could be linked to what the Russians are saying. And I absolutely agree with the President of Ukraine and also Ben Wallace, our own Defense Secretary, of being absolutely firm with the Russians. Any use of a dirty bomb or any potential to turn these nuclear power stations into dirty bombs will get a very strong response, very strong conventional response from the West. But I think it's the death throes of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. They are absolutely desperate and would appear to be trying almost anything to hang on.
Hamish, thank you for talking to us this morning. Hamish de Bretton Gordon, former commanding officer of the UK's Chemical, Biological, Radiological and Nuclear Regiment.